The Diablo IV open beta ended last weekend with some pretty mixed reviews. I'm MJ Bradway with Shared Loot, and today I'd like to share with you guys which features we felt either stood out or missed the mark in Diablo IV's open beta. A quick note that the lists are not in any particular order, and were compiled with feedback from friends and guildmates taken into consideration. With that out of the way, let's get straight into the winners. A definite home run for the Diablo team was legendary aspects. Being able to upgrade a rare item into a legendary, replacing a legendary power with a better one, or the ability to extract the aspect and store it until the time you wanted to use it, was so good. One of the best ways to deal with legendaries that we've found to date. Diablo IV was able to replicate that dark, gloomy vibe Diablo II had, but do it while also looking modern at the same time. Vistas, environmental details, and even character select panels all looked gorgeous and polished. Cinematics made us wish we could watch a feature-length film of them. Blizzard's art is always top-notch, and this is some of their best work. Borrowing an element from MMOs like Guild Wars 2 and Final Fantasy XIV, public events would randomly spawn throughout the zone. They were varied, fun, and rewarding. The fact you get bonus XP just from being near another player, and completing the event rewarded you with useful purveyor currency, meant most players would seamlessly join in before continuing on their adventures. Even though the world boss only spawned a few times on Saturdays, the fight was one of the most memorable parts of the beta. With the camera panning out in a way that reminded us of Lost Ark, the battle felt truly epic. Ashava's mechanics were unique and delightfully punishing of player mistakes. Our group wasn't able to defeat it the first time during the early access beta, driving home the fact that the fight had a learning curve and wasn't just a brainless, quick one-shot. Combat had the visceral, weighty feel you want in an ARPG. The rogue Shadow Imbue felt a lot like Path of Exile's Bane Pop, and a sorcerer with Fireball for their enchant gave off major explodey chest vibes. Even melee combat, with issues we'll discuss in the losers section, had abilities that were a blast to use. Shrines are carried over from Diablo III, but being both out in the open world and inside dungeons was a pleasant surprise. There were both new shrines like Artillery, and new mechanics to old favorites like Conduit. But the neatest feature is that they could all be cursed. This added a new level of risk versus reward, and called for a bit of strategy to fully optimize their use. We really weren't sure how the open world aspect would play out, but can say that we enjoyed it after experiencing it. Scaling mobs meant that you could choose where and how you wanted to level, and it was rewarding to just explore the world. Being free to group up with friends of different levels and adventure in the same area was really nice. This is going to be a huge boon to those of us who like to play a lot of ults. No game is perfect, and unfortunately Diablo IV had its share of issues. Here are the ones the team hopes Blizzard looks into before the June launch. Dungeons were not very fun, and even tedious at times. Layouts were combinations of too long, involved a lot of backtracking, and overly demanding. Nobody likes having to kill every single mob to open a door, especially when it means you have to backtrack a large distance to do it, or after doing it. Some of the boss fights were fun, but overall the dungeons didn't seem rewarding enough for the effort required. We didn't have access to the Paragon system in the beta, and the skill tree we did have really wasn't the best. It felt like we were being forced to play a few of Blizzard's builds, rather than make our own. It all came off as a forced progression down the tree, with respecs for things like your basic skill being particularly convoluted. It also didn't help that increasing respec costs made experimenting with different builds somewhat prohibitive after level 9. We did like that the skill bar isn't a 50-button monstrosity like you see in most MMOs, but felt it could use a few more slots for utility or just cool non-main skills. It felt weird having to put points into abilities to unlock nodes further down the tree, only then to have to decide which of those skills to remove from your bar for your ultimate. Some of the skills also felt underwhelming unless you went all in on them, and overall unbalanced. Yeah, we considered combat a winner, but there were some major issues within the intricacies of it. Animations being after the skill is cast runs counter to most combat systems, where you have to wait until the animation finishes to get the payoff. This results in a queuing of skills, and not skills happening when you press the button. Unless, of course, you want to macro some tiny stutter steps in between your abilities, which is an entirely different issue. It's nice that Diablo IV has an evade, but coming from games like Lost Ark or Elden Ring, the fact that Diablo's evade doesn't have iframes, or even cancel some animations, was infuriating. It resulted in feeling more like a mediocre movement ability, rather than feeling good for pressing the button at the right time. and actually evading something. We felt this the most during the world boss fights, where oftentimes it felt as though the evade distance just wasn't enough to get out of the telegraphed attack, leaving us wondering why we even had it. Here's the big one. Everyone experienced having to wait in a queue at various times during the beta. While this can be expected for a beta, the sheer number of players only made it worse and blew the size of the queues to multiple hour lengths. Compounded with the random crashes and disconnects that would put you at the back of it, made it impossible to enjoy the game at all and bordered on feeling punitive at times. We would love to have seen a similar system to classic WoW that allowed you to skip the queue for a short period if you were already in the game and got disconnected. Action RPG players largely fall into two camps. Some keep a map overlay open all the time, or they spam the map key constantly as a reflex. Diablo 4's map doesn't work for either of those types. For some baffling reason, opening the map completely obscures your screen and stops your character from moving. This was horrible in the open world, but approached torture in dungeons. Considering the overlay map is a staple in most ARPGs, to say we were disappointed in its absence would be an understatement. The developers have said that rare items will have 5 stat lines in the endgame. That, coupled with the fact that every rare item that drops from a mob is potentially useful, means you're going to be spending a lot of time inspecting these items. We feel that Diablo 4 could really use a loot filter, or at least the ability to search your inventory for specific stats. This is especially needed for the shared stash, because now you're compounding all the issues over multiple characters, builds, and classes. And that's it. Those were the major points we felt fell short, and the ones that stood out as big wins for Diablo 4. Overall, the team here at Shared Loot had a lot of fun playing the betas and saw tremendous potential in the end experience. We can't wait to see what the full game looks like when it launches. What did you think of our lists? Did you agree, disagree, or feel we left something off? Let us know in the comments below, and we hope to see you in-game.